Hello, and firstly, I have to say a massive thank you from the bottom of my heart for those of you that have kindly sent me donations that allows me to provide food for myself and for the 3 cats. Of course, that's only a temporary reprieve, but I'm not asking for more. Rather, I'd like to share something with you. It's basically an enticement. It gives an idea of the courses and what I can provide. It is mostly concerning perception. Let's give you a very practical example of this. Now, while you're watching this video or any other video, do you hold the phone, if you're watching it on a mobile phone or a cell phone, do you hold the device in front of you? Or perhaps you're laying down, so you're holding the device so it would appear that I'm sort of looking down upon you, or maybe you lay it flat like that on a table and you're looking down at the screen. But from your perception, does it appear that I'm either hovering above you or laying horizontally below you? Or does the brain filter it out and I still appear to be, as I am doing, sitting in this chair? Now, it may also appear that I look to be 3-dimensional, but that's the brain filtering again. As an experiment, just try turning the phone so it's flat and you're looking at it at a very sort of shallow angle. Now, can you see me? I think you get the idea. It's about perception. And perception is a huge thing. Let me give you 2 examples of perception. We'll start with a science fiction film. I think it's called Aliens. It's the second of those alien films. It's the scene where you have the space marines and their first encounter with these aliens. And the one space marine has this handheld device and it's bleeping and it's showing all these circles, and it looks like there's this mass of these alien creatures. The device is picking up, it's sensing that there is something coming towards this marine. And he looks down this corridor and he says, there must be something wrong with this equipment, there's nothing there. But of course, those aliens are above the ceiling. They're walking above, as it were, and then they drop down. There is nothing wrong with that sensory equipment. It's just our interpretation of that sensory equipment that is the problem. Let me give you another example. This one is quite a practical one and could actually very much benefit you, so keep this one at the forefront of your mind if you find yourself in this situation. That is, you're driving along in a car and all of a sudden you encounter one of these strange sea mists. So it creates like a fog, a mist that's in front of you, so now you can't see so well with your physical eyes. So what can you do to increase your sensory awareness? Well, the first thing to do is slow right down, because you cannot see so far ahead. Therefore, you would have less time to be able to apply the brakes and bring the vehicle to a safe stop, rather than having to take a reactionary swerving to try and avoid an obstacle. So what you do is you turn off the radio, you wind down the window. Now you are driving at a slower speed, you're still using your eyes, but you're also hearing, you're using your ears, you're listening for any bangs, which will alert you, which will forewarn you that there may be a vehicle in front that has not, where the driver has not done this and has collided with another vehicle because the visibility is so much less than without that mist in front of you. That could actually be a huge benefit if you put that into practice in that situation. You're drawing upon more of your, shall we say, God-given gifts. You're drawing on a second sense to help overcome the perceived obstacle that the mist creates to the physical eyes. So where am I going with this? This is something that I'm sure many of you have experienced, including myself, and that is seeing the numbers 111 and 1111 as just two examples. But I'm going to focus particularly on the first one, although the second one is equally important. 111. What is it actually saying? If you see the world, as is often said, the world is a stage, from the perspective of the actor that is unseen to the external audience, is someone who has a script, who's in a little, got a little peephole at the end of the stage. And they will have this script, and just in case you forget your lines, they can prompt you. That is what those numbers are. They are coming from the unseen. They are spiritual prompts. They are guiding you. See them as like a Facebook like. A lot of these things, when we don't have an understanding of what they are, we puzzle over them, we wonder, why are we seeing these things? Why does this keep happening? With hindsight, I would have loved to have actually made a note of every time I have seen 111 and 1111 and many other numbers, and consider at that moment, what was I doing? What was I thinking? What is the date on that day? I would suggest that possibly you may see 111 3 times, possibly 4 times. I can only give you an overview, a blueprint pattern, but it requires you to apply this blueprint to your individual circumstances. There is no one size fits all. There is a loose framework in which to work, which is confirmed by number sequences, which I will come to a little bit later. But effectively they're prompts. But how do we see 111? Well, obviously, at the bottom of the screen there it is, 111. How do you read that? I would suggest that what it is actually saying is 1 and 11. The 11 representing a door. The number 11 in the external world comes up quite a lot. I'm sure you will agree, especially when it is put with another number, say like the number 9. But these are all prompts for you to internalize. So what if it is actually saying 1 and it is suggesting to add 1 and take 1 away? I can certainly show you the inverse of that with biblical passages, one from the Old Testament and one from the New Testament. And they are, it's terrible light in here, but even this is a reflection. Outside it is intermittent rain, dark clouds and gusts of wind. So there's a 3 in the external. So it has led me to create this video sitting in the building where there is less light. Now the sun has come out again. I'm sorry about the little going off on a tangent, but it's reflecting about going within rather than looking in the external. So the adding one and taking one away. Again, I will come on to this and show you the mirror. But the first biblical quote, now don't be put off that it's the Bible, that it's Christian. Leave all that aside. It's the message that we're looking at, the verse. So the first one is Deuteronomy 4:2. Moses declares, "You shall not add to the word which I am commanding you, nor take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God which I command you." The only way in which you can rightly keep God's commands is not to add or subtract from his word. But remember, we're in an inverse reality, because the adding and subtracting has been done. How can I show this? Well, if you open any Bible, when you look at that frontispiece page, it will say King James Version or New International Version or so on and so on. That's the most truthful part of it, because they are all versions. If the word should not have anything added or taken away, why is it there are so many different versions of the Bible, so many different versions of the truth? The 111, the answer is as easy as pie, and that is referenced in the second quote from the New Testament, Ecclesiastes 3.14, chapter 3, verse 14, in other words. "I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it. And God doeth it, that men should fear before him." Remember that this has been highly edited, redacted, rewritten, things added and taken away. So what it requires us to do is go internally and see the 1 and see the 11. Now, it is widely held, let's find my notes here. It is widely held as a belief that you have 5 senses, and you are in a realm of 3 dimensions. Now, certainly from the more spiritual side, there is often talk about going into the 5th dimension, but what about the 4th? Why is that being missed out, for a start? But the truth of it is, you don't have 5 senses, you have 4 senses. This is revealed in the spell, from the sound. You can see, you can hear, you can feel, and you can breathe. They all contain EA. Now, some will say, well, there's a 5th sense called taste. Well, you can certainly have God taste or good taste, but it is not a sense on its own, because as Rudolf Steiner explains, you cannot taste anything without going through the sensation of touch. Try it with anything, whether it be a liquid or a solid food. you cannot do the one without doing the other. So therefore, taste is really just an extension of touch or feel, spelt F-E-A-L. Hear is H-E-A-R and see is S-E-A in this sense. So you actually have 4 senses and not 5, and yet we're told we have 5 senses, so that's where you take one away. Now where you add one, because you're changing basically from 153 to 144, this is what 111 is alluding to, finding 144. So you have the dimensions, you have height, you have width, and you have depth, physical dimensions, which they're actually 3 in 1 because they are references to space. Space is being sort of put across that it's something up there. But to differentiate something between solid objects, there is space. There is also space occupied by the solid object. So space is all around you, which also prompts me to talk off on a slight little tangent here about alien invasion. That has been going on for a very long time, because anything external of you that is going to put something foreign or alien inside you, maybe delivered with a metal point that punctures the skin, is an alien invasion, effectively. But of course, these things are always spun with additional fear attached to these things, and getting us to look in a specific perspective and not be able to see that there is more than one perspective on things. So the height, width and depth, that's your 3 in 1. Now the 4th dimension that you can actually see over a period of time is time. The perfect or the easiest example of that is plant a seed, and then in a few days you may see a green shoot. So within that, the time frame, which is on a different time frame that we operate on in this reality, you'll see the change with that 4th dimension called time. Over a far longer period, you will see how a young baby that looks nothing like its grandparent will eventually resemble that grandparent, but comparing the two, look like they're completely different species. Yes, there are similarities, but equally there are, with aging, with time, there are a lot of differences that are visible with that. So the 111, the 1 is looking at the 11, rebalancing things. Now, can we see evidence of things being imbalanced? Certainly yes. You've only got to look at what will be called the haves compared to the have-nots. It's being in that centre and being able, without judgment, to say, oh yes, if things go this particular way, it will benefit maybe a select few or this group of people. But equally, it will be at the expense of another group of people, generally a larger number. So there's always this contrast of, you'll be able to say, well, that's good for them. You don't have to agree with that group, but you can see surely that it's something that benefits them, but it's at the expense of another group. But don't deem it as good or bad, just see it for what it is. So the balancing is changing 1 from being in 5 senses and 3 dimensions to being in 4 senses and 4 dimensions. That is what the 111 is prompting. I'm pretty certain that what you'll find, and I seem to recall I went through this sequence myself of seeing the 111 and then started to see more the 1111, because it is bringing in that missing fourth element. Because as well as mind, body and soul, which gives you the 3 in this reality, don't forget there's the unseen fourth, which is the spirit. So that is what the 1111 is referencing. Consider when you see 1111, what is happening at that exact moment. What are you considering? What are you thinking about? I would suggest that if you're seeing the 1111, it is more leading you towards the more unseen spiritual realm, whereas the 111 is more to do with the earthly realm. Can I give you any more examples here? Yes, is the answer to that. I've said on video before that the Great Pyramid of Giza is an architectural representation of man. It is the monument of man. I'm sort of extending on what Archaic's channel has shown about the Great Pyramid. I feel there is far more to it, that it is reflecting the internal, the micro, to the macro with this. After all, the Great Pyramid has chambers inside it. Our heart has chambers inside it. In the external world, you have things like chambers of commerce. But consider the pyramid, the part that is in contact with the earth. There are 4 points. There's that number 4 again. Now, you'll have to watch the Archaic's videos on this, but you'll see how the architecture of that structure will convey 108, 138. It also conveys 144 as well, not just the casing stones, if they're restored to it. So the part of the pyramid, the 4 points that are on Earth, there's your 1111 being shown. But to find that missing sense, that Christ consciousness, that's the high point. I want to go off on a little tangent again here. This is something that, as much as anything else, it does reflect the Great Pyramid of Giza in the material realm. This is something that a channel called Silas Speaks talked about in a recent podcast, when he's talking about how power leads to paranoia. And to give you an example of that, if you go for a job interview as the interviewee, you'll probably be interviewed by someone of middle management. If you present yourself in such a way that you almost outshine the interviewer, they are going to feel threatened. They're going to feel a certain amount of paranoia, and you won't get the job, because their position will feel threatened by your presence, because you're a threat to their career. Different if it is the actual owner of, say, a small business. They may then see you as an asset to help grow their business and increase their power. But again, it's that balance of, if you present yourself in a way that would subconsciously seem threatening to the interviewer, they're not going to be very appreciative of that, no matter how qualified or even overqualified you are for that position for which you are applying. And as Silas Speaks channel, as he spoke about, I believe it was talking about putting forward an idea of solving a homeless problem. And what made me smile was the way he described the sort of authority figures, in this case to do with architecture and buildings, but I would say this is equally across the board. He described them as middle-aged men with resting bitch face, which I find rather funny. But there is a serious side to this, because resting bitch face normally comes with a sort of look of with that the mouth is like straight, because they're very much in the material realm, and they're trying to safeguard their positions of power, because they are missing the chief cornerstone, that fifth point, that fifth sense, which is the spirit. So that's why they have the resting bitch face. They're representing the Great Pyramid of Giza with that flat top that is missing that chief cornerstone. Now, if you convert a pyramid into a two-dimensional schematic, you'll end up with a pentagram, and you will get angles of 108 degrees. So you take the 1, you add it to the 8, you're going to get a 9. It's an expression of 1, 4, 4, which if you add 1, 4, and 4, also makes 9. You also have, with the 4 corners, at the base of the pyramid, you have 4 90-degree angles. So again, you have the reference to the number 9. So the 144, the easy answer is to say it's a 9. It is a number of completion. Another way of describing one of those 4s is the physical, the etheric, the astral, and the eye organization, your 4 bodies, as explained by Rudolf Steiner. You can also express it as body, mind, soul, and spirit. So there's 3 in 1 in that, or in both of those. The eye and the spirit are the same thing, basically. But then you have the 3 component parts in this reality, and the connection to your higher self, as it were, which is actually within, not without. So let's just look at these numbers on a linear scale, as it were, here. You'll see the numbers 1 to 9. And of course, the center point is the number 5, again referencing the 5 points of a pyramid. It is also referenced as the midpoint in the Beethoven symphony cycle of 9 symphonies, the 5th, the name applied to it from its 4-note phrase, applied by others, not by Beethoven himself, is the fate motif. Now, when you come forward in time a little bit to the composer Anton Bruckner, there are 9 numbered symphonies, and his 5th symphony, the name that he applied to that 5th symphony, but has not really been adopted by the outside world, is the word fantastic. So the fate is fantastic is being shown there. But 1 to 9, we have a balance, but is it a real balance? It's centered on that number 5. What about the 0, the big nothing, that represents the unseen, the hole from which everything comes into this physical reality? So now, if we add that to the sequence, so we just write that out just to show you there. You have 0 to 9. Now the center point is between the 4 and the 5. Now if we look in this reality, if you take any number between 1 and 9, and if it's to the left of the decimal point, say take the number 1, you can keep adding zeros and you can turn 1 into a million, which is very nice if it's in a bank account and something you can use, hopefully to do good with, not something self-serving. This is the thing with these numbers. Whilst you have 1 to 9, which applies to this reality, do not forget the 0, because the 0 will have an effect on these other numbers, as the example I've just given, say, with bank account figures. There's also something very interesting when you write these numbers out, which I want to come on to now. You may want to write these out, those two lines, the 1 to 9 and the 0 to 9. It will make it easier for me to explain this. Let's just find the right page here. Now, it was on our KX channel that was discovered the collapse protocol 2178. It is the year 2178 on the Anno Domini calendar. What is interesting about this, now if you look at the numbers 0 to 9, what you've got coming in from those two pillars of 0 and 9, those two outside markers, you now have 1 and 2. The other side of that center point is 7 and 8. But because there is a mirror, this is what I mentioned earlier about the mirror, the 2 and the 1 are reversed. So that's why you have 2178. And you can try this calculation, and you can try it either way round. It is still going to come out the same and still show you the same result. So you take 2178, then you take it away from its inverse, which is 8712, which will give you minus 6534. Then you take 6534 and you take away its inverse, which is 4356, and you come back to 2178. Now, if you do it the other way round, you start with a greater number, 8712, and you take away 2178, you're still going to get 6534. And then again, you take 4356, you'll come back to 2178. It is the only number that does this. Now, in all 4 permutations of 2178, as 8712, 2178, 6534, and 4356, if you look at that linear pattern, we'll hold it up again. We can do this. So as well as having the balance of the 21 reversed and then the 78, when you take the other numbers, you'll find the 6 and the 5 reverse, and the 4 and the 3 reverse, and you have that mirror down the middle again. But it gets better than this, because if you add those numbers up, 2, 1, 7 and 8, you're going to get 18. If you do it with 8, 7, 1, 2, you're going to get 18. And likewise with 6, 5, 3, 4 and 4, 3, 5, 6, you will also get 18, which reduces down to 9. Again, referencing 144, referencing 108. 9 is a number of completion. It will lead to a 1 and a 0. But effectively you could say it leads to a new 1. I think we've pretty much covered everything that I wish to cover on this. Just checking the notes again. It's getting rather a long video, but it's perception. How do we see these numbers? Are you just reading them in a straight linear sense, or are you penetrating deeper levels to these things? But of course the devil is in the detail. Again, it's all in the balance. If you go too far into this, it can become a rabbit hole. But what I would take from this is when you see certain numbers, consider what alerted you to see that number? Because do you not see numbers and things all the time, whether it be a car speedometer or the clock, you name it. But what is that significant factor that is drawing your attention that you actually notice it and then start saying, why do I keep seeing these same numbers? Well, that is the answer. They are prompts from the unseen. The 111 is to step through the doorway, which leads to the 1111. So when one sees the 11 and sees that there's a doorway, it opens up into two doors, because you're now more on the spiritual side than the material side of things. And it will reveal the 144. It will reveal so much to you. It comes back to you're bringing in a secondary sense to help the first sense in that analogy I gave you of driving in through the mist, through the fog. And effectively what you are doing, you are piercing the veil of this reality and seeing things with a new perception than the ones you have been sort of shown and told, this is how you read from left to right. Well, not necessarily. What about reading deeper? What about reading vertically as well? This is something else that I come on to more in these series of Dapper courses through various forms of art, various forms of music. They're very revealing what comes out of those, but it empowers you with a different perception to open up the toolbox that you are equipped with inside. Now, there are two gods in this world, as it were, and that applies equally to the external as the internal. One is a god of creation, which is all imagination. The other one is a god of destruction. Now, depending on which god you serve, will depend on the next part on your spiritual journey, because there is a god of destruction that will want to keep you in that 111 and not allow you to find the 1111 that will lead to the 144, and also the 138, which is a 12. The 144 is 12 times 12. You can see 12 replicated in these physical bodies. Is another example. 12 ribs. And look at the way they're split into what are called floating ribs, and the ones that join at the breastbone. You have 12 cranial nerves. You have 12 essential salts that are required for these physical bodies. There are 12 zodiac signs in this reality. There is also a hidden 13th one as well. But the 12 will lead to finding the completion, which will then lead you to the next level, as it were. I'm not saying you're going to find the end with this, but it will certainly get you through this level. This is what this channel is very much focused on, helping you to find the empowerment inside yourself to be able to face that external world without having doubt, fear, or continuously question, why is this happening? Why am I seeing these numbers? If you'd like me to go over any of these points again, I will happily do so. I'm only really skimming the surface of this, but it is giving you a sort of blueprint pattern for you to then apply to your own individual lives as to when you see these numbers. And from that, you may see patterns of, I've seen, say, 111 4 times, and now I'm seeing 1111, and so on. Of course, there are other numbers as well. If you'd like me to, I can go into those as well. Maybe you're seeing 222 or something, or 2222. Obviously, it's easier with the first 5 numbers because of time only going up to 60, but that would hide something. So if you're getting a number like, just trying to think of an example now, if you're seeing a number and then it, say, like 168, it could actually be that it's a sort of hidden 208. So instead of being, sorry, 178, but 168, that was it, sorry. So obviously with a clock, you can't have 68 in minutes, so it would be the next hour, so it would actually be hiding 208, although it is expressed as 168 because it is conforming to the expression of time in 12s and in the multiples of 60 with minutes and seconds. So hopefully that has given you a new perception on how to look at these things, and maybe you want to take this further. So I invite you to try out these courses, because I really don't want to be coming back on this channel and saying I have no money for food and things. I'd much rather be giving something back and a sort of reciprocal exchange and doing it that way. It's far more a balance, rather than me just taking and from your generosity, that I can give you something in return. So anybody who has donated, then you basically got free courses if you so wish. You may have just one question about a particular number or a particular experience. It's probable that I can give you a different take on what that experience is. Certainly with things like anxiety and depression and panic attacks and paranoia, I can certainly do that, because they are not the way they would appear. It is simply that we do not understand the language, which is the sensations from the physical body, because you're going through something new that you haven't experienced before. The conscious mind is looking for external answers to try and make sense of it, and never can. So it's, as much as anything else, it's about learning an internal dialogue within oneself, within the 111, which will lead to the 1111, which will lead to the 144, which is a 9, which is a completion. So hopefully that has brought a bit of clarity and demystified what are basically just spiritual prompts that are guiding you. Think of them as like a thumbs up to a video or a thumbs up on a Facebook post. It's basically saying, keep going, but also be aware of where you are at that moment, because it will then, I feel, make more sense to you as an individual on your individual spiritual journey. So as always, I will say unconditional love to you all.